Welcome to another session of our new format, the International Crimes Investigative Committee. Today, we are going to talk about something extremely serious. It's going to be very hard to swallow, but it's important information because this is the kind of information that could wake some of the people up who have been in line with the government, which they believe is our government. I happen to think that they're not our governments anymore. But we have to look at the real facts in order to be able to make the right choices. And the only choice that, in connection with the vaccines so-called vaccines that I can think of is stop them immediately. We're going to be talking to Dr. James Thorp of the United States. He's a pediatrician. And we're going to talk to Yiannis Zografos. Am I pronouncing your name correctly,
Yes,
Yiannis?
that's correct.
He's an attorney from, I think you're from Athens, right?
Yes,
In
from
Greece.
Athens, yes.
Yes. And we're also going to talk, but she's not with us yet. She's delayed, to Vasilia Souleimanova. She is also a pediatrician from Athens. And we're going to have to look, unfortunately, at the gruesome details of what these so-called vaccinations, what these shots are doing to children. I know because I happened to be at a conference in Portugal a few weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, and there was one of the presenters, many of whom I had met by Zoom, but I was glad to see them in person for the very first time. One of the presenters spoke about the impact that the so-called vaccinations have on fertility rates and on birth rates. And one of the results that I remember is that after the start of the vaccinations, so-called vaccinations, injections is probably a better word. In Germany, birth rates went down by 18%. One of the worst hit parts of Europe seems to have been the town of Basel in Switzerland, where the birth rates since the start of the injections have gone down by 43%, something that cannot go unnoticed. James, do you want to explain who you really are? I think I missed a few things.
No, you did perfect, Reiner. First of all, God bless you and thank you so much. You're a courageous leader of the free world now,
So are you, James.
You're rapidly shrinking our free world, and I believe this is our last stand. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for this platform. Thank you for having myself on. And I had a wonderful chat with Yanni before we started, and thank him for being on and his leadership. And also thank you for providing me with such a beautiful view of behind you of the beautiful snow coming down. It's getting me all excited about the season. So my name is Dr. Jim Thorp, and not to feel bad about this, Reiner, but because nobody understands really specialties. But I'm actually not a pediatrician. I'm an OBGYN physician. So I'm OBGYN, 4 years of residency, and then I'm subspecialty board certified in maternal fetal medicine. So I'm 69 years old. I've been doing this for 43 years. My raison d'etre from my creator was to serve my patients who are women of reproductive age, pregnant women, and preborn babies. That's why I exist. That's why I'm in this fight. I am speaking for my patients whose voice have been taken away from them. And so I didn't just fall off the turnip truck, and I have a difficult time. It's not comfortable for me to pat myself on the back, but you asked me to introduce myself. I've been doing this 43 years. I have focused on an extraordinarily busy clinical practice my whole life. Let me just give you an idea of what I've done in the last 3 years, just so your audience knows that I do have my fingertips on the pulse of obstetrical outcomes in the United States of America and the world. I know what's going on. Just in the last 3 years, I have seen 23,200 plus high-risk pregnancy patients. Let that sink in. 23,200. Why do I know that? because I just had to get recredentialed and look at it in the last week. It's a stunning number of volume. And if that weren't enough, just in the last 2 years, I will have published over 20 publications focused on this disaster, including a book that's about ready to be published. So I challenge, again, not to pat myself on the back, but it's important for your audience to know that I didn't fall off the turnip truck. I am an expert, and there's no other doctor that I'm aware of in the world, as in my specialty, that has seen this many patients, pregnant patients, and have published this much. And I've never been a pure academician. I've always been a pure, heavy-duty, high-volume clinician. All of the hundreds of publications that I've done come after my clinical work. So what else? I have served on the American Board of Obstetrics and Gynecology as an examiner, and now they're attacking me. I have served on the Society of Maternal Fetal Medicine as a board of director. I've worked with the American College of OBGYN. I was summoned by Bush II administration in 2003 to serve as an expert witness in the United States Senate based upon my experience and expertise in treating the fetus inside the womb. I will testify in any court of law, in front of any attorney, in front of any judge. The most egregious violation of medical ethics in the history of the world is pushing this lethal experimental gene therapy in my patients, pregnant women and preborn babies. Yes, pushing it in children is horrible. Yes, pushing it on anybody is horrible. But the most egregious violation of bioethics is pushing this experimental gene therapy in my pregnant women. My pregnant women and women of reproductive age have the repository of all future humanity DNA in their ovum. And this lethal drug concentrates in the ovaries, as you know, Reiner.
Yeah, people, thank you very much for this introduction. I knew that you're an expert, but this is a wall of qualification and experience. What's the title of the book that is about to come out?
Well, COVID-19 vaccinations and beyond. It'll be a good book. It's been very, very time consuming, but very worthwhile.
So when you now talk about your experience with these pregnant women, the first thing that I would like to know is, did they get the shots voluntarily, or is the majority of the pregnant women, or were they coerced into getting the shots by their employer, for example?
Yes, they're coerced, as I was coerced, but I refused it. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're coerced. And to your point, I'm like speaking, you're the expert in the world legally on this. You know as well as I do that there's no such thing as honest, informed consent. We published an article just earlier this year with patient betrayal and the corruption of physician-patient relationship, healthcare, and the corruption of informed consent. There is no informed consent when no doctor in the world knows what's in the vaccine, as you eloquently alluded to, Reiner, earlier. And there is no informed consent either when the head of the FDA and the CDC, who have really perpetrated this, not just in the United States, but the entire world, you know that, they're admitting, Janet Woodcock and also Rochelle Walensky, the doctors in charge, they're admitting that they're hiding data. And they've clearly hidden data. They've hidden the Pfizer 5.3.6 data that is damning. They're hiding the V-Safe data, which is damning. So this is a horrible crime.
What are the consequences of the shots, both as far as the women are concerned, the pregnant women, and of course the fetuses and then the babies when they're born?
Right. Very important question. Let's start with trying to get pregnant, because what our data shows, and I published several different points in time over the last 2 years, the severe effect on fertility and the very abnormal menstruation. And it's very interesting. The Bobby Kennedy's group, CHD, and which I'm part of a group of collaborators across the country, spreading from both coasts of the United States, that have looked at Tiffany Parato, who is she started the My Cycle story. So we broke with our first publication earlier this year on the menstrual abnormalities, and it's a stunning piece of work. We're about ready to start publish our second, and our second series is looking at what causes this abnormal menstruation. And to cut to the chase, 80% of these women that had this sudden onset of abnormal menstrual bleeding, and I'm talking sudden, 80% of them were not vaccinated. What 80% of them, we use what we call a shedding index, but we've shown that our shedding index, which I won't go into, is highly predictive within 1 week of the proximity that a non-vaccinated woman has come in contact with a vaccinated person, ranging from casual contact at work to skin and sleeping with somebody. So there's a tool that gradates that shedding. And how long does it take? 7 days. When a woman who is not vaccinated comes in contact with a shedder within 7 days, we're talking about massive menstrual irregularities, like a bloodbath, and I won't get into that. But I have the patient's comments. And I have family members with the same. I just got a text last night from my dear sister and my 2 nieces, exactly the same, both nurses. I mean, describing their menses is like, I won't even go into it. It's like a bloodbath.
That's, that coincides with what our daughter is telling us. She's, her boyfriend is vaccinated. She's not, and she's suffering the same problems. And I used to think, the only way that there can be shedding is by way of either having intercourse or kissing or blood transfusions or sweat, but it seems to go far beyond this.
Reiner, you bring up a good point, and I think that you're on top of this. You're all over this. You know all of the internal documents that have been exposed by the FOIA. You know as well as I do that it's very interesting that before the vaccine came out, the internal documents said for the people that were in the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, they said, don't sleep with somebody that's been vaccinated if you're pregnant. They warned their patients who were coming in the studies before the vaccine rolled out. They knew what was going on. But yet, how about the general public? We don't get that protection of that warning. It's buried. Now, you asked me about the effects on pregnancy and on fetuses, and I described to you trying to get pregnant. But there's a whole host of extraordinarily concerning problems in pregnancy that I've personally witnessed, and I have proven even now just recently with whistleblower nurses in high vaccinated areas that are exceedingly have irrefutable proof of massive rises in fetal deaths, and we can go into that, but at your leisure as our other guests come on here.
Okay, then let's quickly switch to Yiannis. Yiannis, you're an attorney. Have you dealt with this particularly problematic area of the impact that the so-called vaccinations, that the injections have on pregnant women? Have you taken a closer look at this, or is your area of expertise not particularly directed at this special area?
First of all, Mr. Fuellmich and Mr. Thorp, I am very honored to be with you, to be with two leaders of the new world. That should be, because the new leaders should be something like that. Something like you and Mr. Thorp, who are not intimidated and who look forward not to establish a new world order, but to remind us all that it's something that we have forgotten. Real life, real connection between people and real society. So I am an attorney at law, and I have a master's degree in criminal law, and I've been a lawyer for 28 years. And these 2 years of the pandemic phase, I have been trying to sort out what is really the pandemic and what's going on with this COVID situation. Reading books, reading articles, and of course, having contact with lots of people who are either dismissed from their jobs because of not being injected, or having health problems which have to prove, first of all, to the courts, and then, of course, to pay for the damages of what has happened to their lives, just like that. So I do not have an expertise on this particular aspect of the pandemic, but of course I have faced numerous cases for these people on the courts, the Greek courts, with no good results at all, if any results. Because you have to know that all these courts, especially in Greece, want to be obedient to the power, to the government. That's why we do not have even one decision in our favor. Most of them are deliberately delayed, the cases. For example, I want to tell you that I filed a lawsuit in the administrative courts for the dismissed health workers last year, and yet the trial has not been determined.
So they're stalling. They're stalling and playing for time.
And of course, we should know, and everybody should know, that the Greek, especially the Greek, the European overall, but the Greek judicial system is corrupt. And without wanting to elaborate on that, you should know that the heads of justice in Greece, that is the Supreme Court, the chief prosecutor and the Council of the State, are picked by the government. So if this is what happens, how can they be not obedient to their masters? And that's the main problem that we face here.
We do too in Germany, and I think this is true throughout Western Europe. There are very, very few exceptions of upstanding judges who are willing to uphold the rule of law, but most have been intimidated, in particular here in Germany. I know of a few cases where, mostly criminal cases, where the prosecutors went after someone who didn't wear a mask or didn't wear it correctly or was sitting too close outside, not indoors, but sitting too close to someone else. I know in one of these cases I was involved. I was the defense attorney. That in some cases, on formalities, on technical grounds, they were let off the hook. But whenever it comes to the really important issues, for example, the most famous case that went to court here in this country is two high-ranking soldiers of the German military, of the Air Force. They fought the vaccine mandates. And it looked extremely promising at first. because my good friend, Professor Martin Schwab, not related to the evil Schwab, but he's a really good guy, one of the best attorneys I know, and one of the most straightforward and honest people I know. So he was one of the attorneys. He was the lead attorney, in fact, and he's a professor of law. And he said it almost destroyed him to see what they did. They did listen to expert testimony, including Professor Ulrike Kemmerer, who's the PCR test specialist, including Professor Susharit Bhakti, who I mentioned earlier. But, and this is almost a half a year ago, that's when they made the decision against the two soldiers. But we still don't have a written opinion. We still do not have a written opinion, because the only way they could have decided this case, this is the highest German administrative law court, the only way they could have decided it against the soldiers was by ignoring this expert testimony, because it was clear. And the government's attorneys even had to admit that they don't know if this is safe or not, because they don't have the data for it. Well, in the meantime, we know much more. But all of them will have to pay for this. And I think we should let them know that we're going to come after them. We as attorneys and we as a society of humans, we will come after them. There's no letting up.
That's for sure.
Well, tell me, Jim, what did you see? What happened to the pregnant women, apart from when they were trying to get pregnant, menstrual problems? Did they suffer any other adverse effects, and what happened to the fetuses and to the babies?
Absolutely. I can speak to that because I've published on that. I've been studying that for 2 years. So we recently published late August, we have a manuscript in press, in preprint. It'll be published shortly. So we took VAERS data, and we didn't, of course, the VAERS data in of itself, as testified and proven to me by the world expert on VAERS, who is Albert Benavides, and Albert has a high presence in Europe too, and in Italy. So I'm sure all of us here are aware of his work, but it's intentionally being throttled. There's a massive danger signal in VAERS, and they have, as hard as they've tried, and they've done it successfully, they've lessened that danger signal, but it's still horrible. So they have fraudulently manipulated VAERS, but we didn't touch that. We knew that. We have proof of that, which will come out in subsequent publications. But we just took the US, the CDC, the VAERS data, which, by the way, is monitored legally under the US government. The VAERS data has always served as a pharmacovigilance tool for vaccines. So we started pushing the influenza vaccine, including myself. I'm pointing at myself. It was approved by the FDA for pregnancy, CDC, in 1997, latter part. So in 1998, we chose our January 1st, 1998 as our beginning point, 285 months ago, for the influenza vaccine in pregnancy. Perfect control group, because even I, as a physician, and I wouldn't do it now. I'd never recommend it right now because I don't trust the government. They're corrupt. But I did push those vaccines in pregnancy, and I pushed pertussis in pregnancy as well, because I did my due diligence 30 years, 20 years ago, and I felt like there was a potential benefit. I think I made a mistake, but that's another topic. My point is that influenza vaccine in pregnancy was a perfect VAERS control group. Experimental group, COVID-19 vaccines that have obviously been only about 18 months, 20 months of data. So with that in mind, what we showed was that the proportional ratio, risk ratio, PRR, which the CDC and the FDA have on their website, is critical If it's 2 or greater, it's a danger signal. So what did we find? Well, with regard to the menstrual irregularities that I spoke of earlier, we found a 1,192-fold increase in menstrual abnormalities with the COVID-19 vaccine compared to the influenza vaccine. Let that sink in. That's not 1192%. That would be almost 119,000%. So then we look at miscarriage. There's a huge risk of miscarriage, way, way high. In fact, it's so high that in order for us to get it on a graph, we had to convert the graph x-axis to a logarithmic. Otherwise, it would be a mile to the right in a different city on my screen as I'm looking at it. The same thing with fetal abnormalities, malformations, the most stunning of which was also cystic hygroma, which is a common, sometimes lethal malformation we see in the late first trimester and early second trimester. We've seen a massive increase in cardiac abnormalities in the fetuses, fetal cardiac arrhythmias, fetal cardiac arrest, a abnormal placental function, abnormal appearing placentas with waning function, substantial increase in fetal growth restriction. So the placentas are not feeding and providing nutrients and oxygen and gas exchange for these babies in the womb. So their growth is being stunted. The abnormal testing, the surveillance testing of my fetuses, my preborn babies that can't speak, whose voice is not being heard by the governments and by their doctors, substantially increased. Abnormal biophysical profile assessment, abnormal non-stress tests. We have a substantial increase in very abnormal blood flow to various organ systems in the fetus, as evidenced by Doppler velocimetry. And finally, we have a substantial increase in fetal death. These numbers are so far off the charts that they're irrefutable. Now, there are those detractors out there, the powers that be, that have tried to sabotage VAERS and other pharmacovigilance tools around the world. Completely nonsensical. These are all reviewed by government officials before they're published in VAERS. So this, and now if this is not enough, I can put a slide up, which I won't bore you or your audience with. If you don't believe our analytics, then you're going to have to flush down the toilet 30 plus other completely independent sources that are completely supportive, if not worse than the VAERS data. And I won't go through all of those, but I will tell you that the UK yellow card is worse. The European Medicines Agency Vigilance system, actually worse. The World Health Organization Vigi Access, worse. The UK government itself, and people can't believe this, and people try to deny this, but I can pull it up right now and show you. The UK government themselves on uk.gov buried in their website the following: we do not recommend the use of the vaccine, COVID-19 vaccine, in pregnancy or in breastfeeding women. It's still there. It's been there for a long time. They speak out of both sides of their mouth. Why have they buried it in there? It's very clear. I have two brilliant attorneys that are on this call, at least two, there may be more. The reason is this: plausible deniability.
So we are talking about absolute evidence, doctor. Isn't that true? I mean, this is evidence. This is proof.
Is evidence. If I'm wrong, shoot me dead. I'm willing to base my life on it. I'm absolutely 100% certain. And let me tell you this: my recent whistleblower from Central California and the whistleblowers that I have in Canada. And why do I focus on California and Canada? Because the fascist, communist, tyrant, little spoiled brat tyrant, Justin Trudeau, is pushing it and mandating. So the vaccine rates are sky high. I have 3 communities up there where I have massive stillbirth. And let's talk about the massive stillbirth rate from the Central California community. I won't name the community. My whistleblower, her name is Michelle Gershman. She's an RN. She's extremely credible. We've been all over the media with her testimony on several different platforms. She would be happy to be on this platform. But this is her story. I verified it. I vetted it. I stand by it. It's absolute truth. It's irrefutable. It's undeniable. Nobody can take this down. Her administrative boss, a nurse administrator of women's services in 2 institutions in that community that do about 9,000 deliveries per year. The average, according to to Michelle, they would have 1 to 2 stillbirths every 2 to 3 months. That's about in line with the national average. We calculate and monitor stillbirth rate, and let me be very careful to the audience to define this. A miscarriage is very different from a stillbirth. A stillbirth only occurs at 20 weeks of pregnancy or after. A miscarriage, also known as a spontaneous abortion, only occurs less than 20 weeks. I'm purposefully staying away from miscarriage because there's so much variance by gestational age from 4 weeks to 20 weeks. There's no variance in the fetal death rates because they're pretty rare events. The events nationally are 5.8 per 1,000 births. Births live-born and stillborn in that denominator. So it's very different than a miscarriage. It's very different from a newborn death, which occurs when a baby has any vital signs coming out of the birth canal or out of the C-section scar. If the baby is dead, it's a stillbirth. If the baby has any signs of life, it's a live birth. So it's totally separate. It's important. The nurse manager of the Central California community in charge of both hospitals, a supervisor administration, sent out an email in September to every nurse in women's services in both hospitals. I won't mention name. And you need to look at these interviews. This is a very credible witness. This is a young lady that went into work that read this email, and it was horrific. Basically, they said, we've had a massive increase in fetal deaths. We reached our record this month, referring to August of 2022, 22 stillbirths. And the administrator nurse went on to say, and there are many more that we didn't count that are likely came in through the emergency room or through the operating room or didn't even come into the hospital. So that's an underestimate. And she said this matches our record-breaking month a year ago, which was July of 2021. There were also 22 stillbirths. Now let this sink in. I don't want to get too technical here, but when you compare this rise, we speak of sigma or standard deviation. And just to give you an idea, the 5.85 or so, we'll use that number per 1,000 births. The standard deviation of that is about 0.5 stillbirth per 1,000 birth. That means the 95% confidence interval would be from 5.89 to 6.89. That represents a 2 sigma. Okay? This is a 40 plus standard deviation event to go from 5.89 to 22 stillbirths in that month that would equate to about 29.5 fetal death rate, stillbirth rate per 1,000 births. 5.89 to 29.2, that's 40 plus sigma event. Let's let that sink in. That is impossible to have occurred. It did not occur in 2020 when COVID-19. In my clinical experience, there were no increase in fetal deaths in 2020. And I can prove that nationally because if I aggregate the data from 2017, 2018, and 2019, I aggregate those three national data in the United States of America, that aggregate data is about 5.85 or so for those 3 years. If coronavirus, COVID-19, were causing stillbirth, it would have been a massive increase in 2020 nationally, a massive increase. And I didn't notice this in my clinical practice. What happened in 2020? The stillbirth rate went down. If you aggregate those 3 years before 2020 and compare them to 2020, the stillbirth rate went down. Now, it didn't massively drop, but it went down to about 5.7, 5.74, so it is a drop. It didn't increase. The fetal deaths and stillbirths, exactly as in the adult and the baby data, didn't start until the rollout of the vaccine. The same thing that Edward Dowd, the market analyst, the numbers guy, brilliant young man, managed the hedge funds for BlackRock. He's become a whistleblower because this guy is a brilliant mathematician and population. He knows all the data. And so he says that there's a 40% all-cause mortality in the United States of America after the vaccine rolled out. Let's put his numbers according to what Edward Dowd says. A 10% rise is catastrophic for the insurance company. Just a 10% rise, that represents a 3 sigma event. He describes it as a 1 in 200 year black swan event. A 40% rise, 4 times 3 sigma is 12 sigma, would be a 1 in 1,000 year black swan event. A 40 sigma event, you do your own math, that we've seen in stillbirth. What changed from 2020 to 2021? I'll let you be the judge. The data speaks for itself.
Res ipsa loquitur. The facts speak for themselves, evidently. I can't think of any other cause that might have induced this extreme rise in infant mortality. The only thing that explains is the start of the injections. There's no other. There's nothing else. This should convince every court of law in the entire world if they were willing to look at the evidence.
Of course, yeah, because the numbers are devastating. The numbers that Mr. Thorp gave us are devastating, and finally the vaccine is working, isn't it?
Well, the latest that we've heard from the European Parliament, where I think a Dutch member of the European Parliament questioned a pretty high-ranking representative of Pfizer, and he asked her if they did any trials on the efficacy of the so-called vaccines, because that's what everything is based on. It's effective. You need to protect yourself and others. And it turns out they didn't even try to conduct such trials. So it's all a lie. It's a blatant lie. We are now Vasilia Souleimanova. Is that how you pronounce it? It's a Russian name, right?
Yes, it is. It's Hungarian, have Russian.
Yes. Very interesting. Has now joined us, and she is she specializes in, what is your specialty? She's a medical doctor, but what is your area of specialty?
I'm a pediatric surgeon. My patient is from 24/7 weeks prematurity of pregnancy to 16.
And we were, just before we went live, we were talking about how all these horrific consequences of the shots are becoming more and more visible, and how not just with children or babies or fetuses, but it also concerns, of course, grown-ups, it concerns adults, it concerns absolutely fit individuals, members of the armed forces in the United States. I've seen the charts that were provided to me by our friend Tom Renz. Stunning numbers, increases in all kinds of diseases after the start of the so-called vaccinations. But the weird thing is that there's almost no reaction, neither by the public, which, if you look at the mainstream media, is of course controlled by the people who are driving this, but also not by the relatives, by the people who lose loved ones. One very recent video I saw is of Peter McCullough, Dr. Peter McCullough, who was totally surprised and stunned to see how no one seems to notice that something extremely unusual is happening with young people dying. Before you joined us, Vasilia, I alluded to Professor Bhakti's presentation, which I think the first such presentation was in Vienna, and a couple of weeks later he and I were in Athens, and he explained about massive personality changes. That's the only thing I can think of that would explain this. Well, I guess you could call it a stoic reaction or a non-reaction by the people who lose loved ones, who seem to think, oh, this is normal. This guy is only 16 years old, but maybe he did die of a heart attack or myocarditis or whatever. What is it that you can tell us about your area of expertise? What happened to the children?
I'm a pediatric surgeon, so I operated children. The most common situation that gets in my hands is appendicitis. And what I see in the tissues when I open the operative trauma is a very loose connection in the adipose tissue, in the fat, and in the muscles, and a jelly-like substance in the peritoneum, in the peritoneal fluid, and it's like a honey, like a very thin honey like situation with some substitution included. And the fat is very jelly-like, and the muscles are waterous and very loosely connected between the tissue, between the cells. And as time goes by, I can tell when if the child was vaccinated now or some weeks ago, or there's some time passed, like 4 or 5 months, because the tissue is changing by the time. It becomes like fried in the fat tissue, and in the muscle tissue, the connection becomes very tight. With some like white cords between the muscle tissue. It's very weird. I haven't seen anything like it before, and I was watching it for some months because I was not expecting something like that. I was expecting some issues with vaccinated children because I was frightened about them, about the government vaccinating my patients. But it wasn't something I was expected. I expected clots or something like that. And when I first saw something like that, the jello substance in the tissue, I just couldn't believe in my eyes. I was looking in the literature and in the articles and everywhere else. I was trying to talk very kindly very softly to my colleagues about, haven't you seen anything like that? And they were like, okay, it might be due to peritonitis or due to something congenital disorder. And it wasn't like that, because I was asking, it wasn't peritonitis, it was an acute appendicitis. And I was asking parents if there is something wrong with it, if it is something known about the child, like congenital disorder of tissues. There was anything like that. There wasn't anything like that. So looking for answers, I read everything just I couldn't let my eyes on and couldn't find an answer at all. And as the work was passing by, so many children were and the acute appendicitis was very increased at this time, and so many children were operated, and watching that obvious situation again and again, I must tell that not all the children had the same situation going on. Some of them was the state of the tissue was more obvious. For some of them was different and slightly less obvious. But for now, I can tell what child was vaccinated or not, or what child had a COVID or not. Because
one second, Vasilia. Jim would like to ask you a question.
Yes, of course.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I just wanted to comment, Dr. Vicky. Thank you so much for coming on. It's such an honor to visit with you. Just for Reiner's benefit and for the benefit of our audience here, I just want to say that I, as a maternal fetal medicine specialist in pregnancy, I work really, really closely with the specialty of Dr. Vicky, because when we have a congenital malformation that I identify at halfway through the pregnancy, that I will immediately reach out to Dr. Vicky or a doctor like Dr. Vicky in my specialty, so that we can coordinate, because she provides a tremendous service to my patients and to me too, because when I have a beautiful young couple, and we have some type of a malformation, the first thing they want to know is, well, what can we do after birth to, plastic surgery to help this? And so this is her expertise, and extraordinarily important for my patients, my pregnant women and my preborn babies. So we will often get them to visit. And so the question that I wanted, a few things that I want to ask and a comment is, number one is do you think that there's a possibility, what I've seen in offspring is that there may be a prolonged, if not permanent, alteration in the newborn's immune system for those babies whose mothers during pregnancy were vaccinated. And why do I say that? Well, there's a physiologic basis, and we've all know that the lipid nanoparticles concentrate in the ovaries 118-fold. And again, it's not that I don't care about men, but my patients are women, and my women fetuses and my women adults who are pregnant are the repository of all of the genetics for the future of humanity. It's not, yes, men have that, but men create 1 million or 20 million sperm per hour. A woman fetus has only 1 million ova for her entire life, and they start rapidly declining in numbers due to attrition and apoptosis after birth and after menarche. So this is a precious repository for the future of humanity. So everybody's focused on the lipid nanoparticles in the ovaries, but nobody has really focused that the same biodistribution studies show that the thymus in the fetus is the seed of the immune system for that baby's entire life. It seeds the cellular immunity for that child for its entire life. The lipid nanoparticles also concentrate in the thymus gland. In the fetus, the thymus gland is massive. It's much larger per body weight than the adult. In fact, it's large. You can see it on ultrasound, and it concentrates the lipid nanoparticle. So I guess my question is, could your findings be related to this in any way, shape, or form? And then secondly, do you see in your practice, Dr. Vicky, do you see an increase in congenital malformations? Because I have on the ultrasound.
I must say, for the moment, I don't work because in our country, the unvaccinated doctors are away from the system. And so for 4 months, I'm away from my beloved job, beloved work.
Excuse me. I have to stress out to the rest of the non-Greeks of our company that Mrs. Souleimanova is a modern hero because she's being persecuted by the health authorities of Greece because of speaking publicly about her clinical experience. She's being persecuted, and we do not know whether this will stop now or afterwards, but nowadays she's being persecuted. And you have to bear in mind that she's speaking what she knows and what she has experienced, but in her own cost. Okay, go on. Ricky.
Well, maybe you can. Maybe Vasilia, you can speak to the topic that James asked you about from your previous work. We realize that you can't work right now, but you must have seen stuff.
I just wanted to tell that for now I work in very small hospital of Larissa. It's a very even for a Greek reality, we have a very small pediatric surgeon clinic, so we don't treat fetus so closely and so often. But I can tell one thing. If I found this kind of tissue in the tissue that is very secondary to the health and to the not secondary, it's not secondary, but it's not thymus, it's not brain, it's not heart. But if I find this alteration in this kind of tissue, I'm positively sure that it goes everywhere, just everywhere. When I saw the alteration in the muscle tissue, I could understand where is myocarditis coming from, because it was very characteristic. It was very hitting the eye. What is going on in the muscle tissue and everywhere in this kind of muscle tissue, and the myocardium and the lean muscles in the intestine and lean muscles of the vessels and everything. So I believe so. It's not my specialty, the thymus and the immune system of the child, but I believe so. And knowing what Dr. Bagdi have found, having read everything written about alteration of the every organ and every tissue in the human body from the vaccination. I believe it's devastating. I believe it's devastating to the child's health. And if only you assume that there's muscle tissue that is alterated. For the child of the first year of life, it's like putting it in the cage and not leaving it to move. Mm-hmm. And knowing that it goes everywhere, every tissue, that like every tissue is alterated. I just it's a very hard thought to think what is doing to the entire body of a child and of a fetus, even if it just the microclots in the placenta, even that is very frightening. We all know what happens when placenta doesn't work really good. I have 2 children of myself, and it was very anxious about when to think about when somebody was telling that placenta is not in very good condition, and knowing that even if a slight possibility of even if it is a possibility, we all know that pregnant women must be very careful about medicine they are taking during pregnancy, right? Like paracetamol or anything else, even if it's very common medicine, they were told always not to take it. Now we go and vaccinate with something very new, even if it was okay with the even if that vaccine was something good, but it's new, it's unknown, it's and we know it's not good at all. It's
Vasilia, we know from a whistleblower who participated in the Pfizer trials. Her name is Brooke Jackson. She's pretty famous now. 25 years of experience. We know from that whistleblower that they really did not conduct any real trials. And the when Brooke Jackson took Pfizer to court, she rang the alarm bells after she found out what she found out, that there was no real medical no medical supervision in these trials, that the numbers were doctored. So she rang the alarm bells, informed the FDA, and instead of investigating this, they seem to have informed Pfizer's attorney, who called her the next day and threatened her. So when she decided, I think with the help of Ed Dowd, she decided to go to court and sue Pfizer. Their defense was, we didn't have to adhere to any rules or regulations. We were under a special contract, I forget the name, under a special contract with the DOD, the Department of Defense. And the only thing we were asked to do is provide them with, 50 million or so prototypes. That tells you the whole story. That plus what we learned from a hearing that was conducted in the European Parliament, in which another high-ranking Pfizer official admitted that they did not conduct any trial with respect to the efficacy of this. So this is a sham, and it's a very obvious sham. I was going to ask you, Yiannis, were you involved in the proceedings which they used in order to, to get Vasilia from keeping her from work?
No, for the time being, she's not persecuted criminally.
Uh-huh.
So we do not know what is going to happen yet, because you know that in the next couple of months, or maybe in February or March, we might have elections. So you know that in Greece, this is something very crucial they cannot handle easily this kind of stories because lots of people have been dismissed from their jobs. I think there are around 6,000. Isn't that so, Vicky?
7,500 about that.
Yeah, there are more. So they as you understand, Reiner, they will have to handle cases like Vicky's in a particular way that they will not harm them to the upcoming elections. So up to now, she's clear. But of course, there are hundreds of people that are starving right now because of, yes. And this is not an exaggeration. This is the full truth. They are starving because...
You mean members, doctors, nurses, members of the medical community who...
Yes.
Because they can't make any money, because they can't work, they don't make any money, and they can't buy any food?
Of course. And, even though they are dismissed from their jobs, they cannot take even a percentage of their previous salary. The percentage of this previous salary is taken by those who are imprisoned for criminal charges, just as like theft or burglary or whatever, rape. They can take a percentage of their salary, but the doctors and the nurses who are dismissed from their jobs for not being vaccinated, they receive nothing, no.
But doesn't anyone notice that this is obviously not just arbitrary, but it's intentional? They're trying to destroy that part of the medical community that is critical of the official line.
Of course. And a couple of days ago, the Minister of Health, who is a lawyer also, you should know, declared that it is my goal. This was the word that he used. It is my goal to set all those people who do not believe in vaccines outside the Greek health system. That is my goal.
Yeah.
Permanently.
Yeah, it will not work, but for the time being, it's extremely dangerous because, as you're saying, and I wasn't even aware of this, people are starving because they can't make any money because they can't work. This is insane. This is horrible.
But this is
of a dentist previously, of a young woman of 36 years old. She was persecuted for not being vaccinated by her father that wanted her to be vaccinated. And she had to close her dentistry. And she committed suicide, a young woman, a scientist. She was also a student of medical institute, beside being a dentist. And it was devastating for us. It's everybody is so. I don't have the word. I'm sorry. It's overwhelming. I knew her something, and she was a great person and very great fighter. And we just couldn't believe it because she was a fighter, and we are in that state of mind that committing a suicide is easier than keep going. It is very hard. And there is this hunger strike going on right now again, and nobody seems to care. Just nobody seems to care.
Yeah, that is exactly what Dr. Peter McCullough said in this very short video clip, which I watched yesterday. He was exasperated. He just couldn't understand why there was no real reaction from the survivors, the relatives of the people who either died after getting the shots or committed suicide, because the numbers are so staggering that there is no explanation for it except what we're dealing with. And this is that's the conclusion that I have come to. We're dealing with genocide, because we all know now that eugenics is what pushes this agenda, which is now turning into genocide. So we're dealing with genocide, but at the same time, we cannot expect any help from the victims, at least not from all of the victims, because as Professor Susharit Bhakti explained, it does seem to have in many, not in all of the people who get the shots, it does seem to have this effect of not dumbing them down, but breaking their will. In some cases, he says, it's like breaking their will. The conclusion that I draw from this is that we have to focus on ourselves, on our community, on the resistance. And if somebody needs help from the others, not from the other side, but from those who got the shots and asked for help, then of course we're going to help, because that's the only thing we can do. But for the time being, I think we must understand that it is in many cases a waste of time and energy to try and convince those who are in line with the government. Yeah, that's exactly, Jim. That's what I think, and I'm not trying to be arrogant, or I'm just trying to look at the facts as explained by Professor Bhakti, and as by what we're witnessing ourselves. A little before you came on, Vasilia, I told Jim and Yiannis that my wife and I were thinking that we were imagining things when we're going to our favorite restaurant, and those waiters and waitresses who we used to joke with all of a sudden seemed to have changed completely, apart from the fact that they couldn't remember what we had ordered, and they kept returning to our table. Was it a white wine or red wine? What kind of white wine? One in particular, a particularly nice woman who we used to joke with all the time, she walks around as though she's a zombie. So that's another thing we do have to take into consideration. We must focus on our group of people, on our resistance, because their system is going to collapse anyhow. It is collapsing right now. So we need to keep in mind that pretty soon we're going to need you, and you, Jim, and all the other people from the medical community, because the others won't be around anymore. Or if there are, they're not going to be able to function anymore. At least this is a disturbing, we can't see how much damage this is doing, but for the time being, I think we must look the real facts straight in the eye and be aware that we're the only ones who are going to be able to help ourselves and them.
Yes,
for Greek people, at least, I don't know what is going on in other countries, but Greek people are very disappointed in government. Very disappointed. I've read a story of a friend of mine that she went to the cemetery and was talking to the man who, I don't know the English word for this, who...
The undertaker?
Yes, this one. And he told her that many young people died recently. And after
all of them agree on that. John O'Looney is another example, another case in point. He explains the same thing.
And after a minute, he admits that his own son died. 15-year-old boy died of his own. And she tells him, "And why are you not doing anything?" And what could I do? What he asked? What could he do? I would grab a gun or something. I don't know. I'm sorry about talking like that. But he asked rhetorically, what could he do? This is just frightening. The reaction of the people is frightening. It's not logical. It's not.
You're absolutely right, Dr. Vicky. And Reiner, this might be a good segue since you brought it up.
Yeah.
If you go to that, the second clip, the first clip is only 2 minutes of Died Suddenly. This is a movie documentary I helped with, but this is an incredible production. But we actually, my friend, the embalmer, Mr. Richard Hirschman, is a friend, a dear friend. He lives close by me, and he has an incredible presence in that second clip, and it shows the clots that he's pulling out, has his comments, and it's just a short. The first clip is 2 minutes. The second one is less than 4 minutes. It might be very valuable for our panel and for your audience. Your call.
Yes, we will. We will definitely show it. I've seen it. I've spoken with Stu Peters a couple of times. Good guy, strong activist. But of course, we're going to show this clip because this is exactly what shows in a very dramatic but not exaggerated way what's going on. Maybe it is going to open some people's eyes. But that's the major problem that we've run into. The non-reaction, which also seems to have stunned Dr. Peter McCullough and many others. We have to realize that Sucharit Bhakti is probably right, or Peter Bregan, when he says this reminds him even of lobotomy. It doesn't happen with everyone, but it does seem to happen with quite a few people. Yeah. But we will definitely play this clip.
Why? Why do we never believe them?
These people know. These people know.
Who knows?
The governments know. This has been well planned. This is Agenda 2030. This is the Great Reset.
Somebody mentioned to go onto Google and go into the news section and then type in "died suddenly." And lo and behold, here's a whole listing of people, of articles, of people within that last week who died suddenly. Older people, but a lot of younger people around the world.
And then you find out they were vaccinated. And so it's like, okay, so it's the vaccine might be causing this.
Most people don't want to know what's in the vaccines.
But yet when we open it almost 2 years into this, we find that it still says intentionally blank.
In fact, nobody wants to know what's in the vaccines because, look, if people understood what was in the vaccine, they'd go apeshit.
It's just there's something different about the blood. Something's causing this and something needs to be said. Somebody needs to look into it. I talked to other embalmers that have 30, 40, even 50 years of experience. Have you guys ever seen this stuff before? And the answer was always, I've never seen anything like it.
Why is Bill Gates involved in public health? And why does public health spend the first part telling you how the world is overpopulating?
And at first glance, this is a bit scary.
U.S. life insurance companies have reported an overwhelming and unexplainable increase in all-cause deaths among 18 to 49-year-olds.
That's a 12 sigma event, 1 in 800 years, 12 standard deviations above the mean.
No one's even calculated that. It's apocalyptic.
I thought he was protected with that Pfizer.
There's a huge part of me that feels a responsibility for everything that's happened. I'm so sorry.
The doctor after a while came out and said, your son's dead, you can go home now.
Who knows? Young people are dying these days.
I said to Mr. Hirschman, this is different. This isn't normal, is it? And he said, absolutely not.
The dead can't speak for themselves, so therefore I have to speak for them.
We're connecting dots here. You know, there's no way that that type of obstruction would not cause stroke, heart failure.
My sister died She was 58, and she died suddenly on Friday of a heart attack.
They will do with you what they feel like doing to you. It's the new bullet, it's the new missile, it's the new form of warfare.
I wanted people to understand that we're in a fifth-generation warfare for the heart and the mind.
This is the greatest orchestrated die-off in the history of the world.
There's most definitely evil in this world, and evil like we could not possibly imagine.
If you permit me, Reiner, I have seen in people that had 2 doses a time ago to being relatively okay to coming to their senses somehow as time passing by. But people that keep going with the vaccination, they're more and more fanatic about it. And I believe it's something not very permanent, if not 100%. But in some partly of the personality alteration goes away. But I believe that they persist for so many doses again and again, every 3 or 4 months, or to doing again and again. It's because of this personality alteration also. Not only, I believe that there's so much more going on. I can receive it like in the whole picture for now, but I believe there are many aspects of the vaccination itself that is going on, and as a social experiment about people believing. For how many will insist on this, believing in some kind of joke of medical science. And I also believe there are many other aspects about trying how much carbon or something our bodies can take. I believe they studied very well what they were going to do, because what they said that the vaccine was made in 8 months or something. That's not true, because they had it ready for some time already.
I agree with that. I do think Vasilia and Yiannis and Jim, that maybe this is the right time to finally file complaints for damages for those who suffered vaccine damages, for those who lost loved ones because of the vaccines. And because it's now or never. If we wait any longer, I think there's going to be more people from that group of people who have been in line with the government, who are not going to fight back. I think this is important. I think it's important to show, this is empowerment, to show that something can be done. Because the reaction that you described, Vasilia, of the undertaker who said, "What can I do?" Well, it is natural and it's understandable that is what people tend to think after what Yiannis described, after all these lost court cases. But if we are able to motivate a lot of people from all over the world, I think this should be an international effort, from all over the world to join a class. That's what class actions are for. To join a class of people who have finally understood that the loss of their child, for example, or the stillbirth that they suffered, has something to do with the vaccines. this will be empowerment for those who think they're powerless, and it'll also send a very strong message to the judiciary. And it still functions in some parts of the United States. It doesn't in Germany, at least not at this point, and it doesn't in Greece, obviously. But there is a lesson to be learned from my experience. My courtroom experience mostly involves big, huge global corporations, Deutsche Bank, VW, for example. And here in Germany, when the courts didn't want to look at these cases, they didn't want to see the evidence, it was only a matter of time until in the United States, the courts of law dug into this very deeply. And eventually, both Deutsche Bank and VW had to admit that they had defrauded their customers. And they even apologized. It all came out. And that's what changed everything in Germany as well. Finally, the German courts of law couldn't ignore the evidence anymore. And I think that's what we need to do. And there's only two places that I know of where the judiciary still functions, and that is India. You may have heard that in India, Bill Gates he has serious problems because there are three I think our friend attorney Deepali Ojha told me 3 criminal investigations, very serious investigations going on against him for mass murder committed through the so-called vaccinations. But of course, there's still the United States. There are still some venues in the US where the judiciary functions. And on top of this, you have a society in which I would venture to say between 40 and 50% of the people don't trust their government anyway. It doesn't have anything to do with COVID necessarily, but for a long time, Americans have been suspicious of their own government. That, by the way, and you know this, Jim, that's the reason why we have the Second Amendment in the United States, because people had to leave their home countries, England, for example, because they were either persecuted for religious or political reasons, and they decided, if this ever happens again, we're going to have to be ready. We're going to have to be able to defend ourselves. That's why I think the best place for starting such an international effort is the United States. It's the only place that has the tools to do it. It has class actions. It has a real law of evidence, pretrial discovery, and on top of this, it has punitive damages if you can show intent, and we can show this.
So, Reiner, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
We have to file claims, as far as European countries are concerned, to small district courts, because the high courts, as I mentioned before, are unlikely to issue a decision in our favor. I explained why. But the small courts have lots of judges who are, of course, not that intimidated by the force, by the power, by the government, and they can talk through a court decision and back the morality and the law. And I think by the day that we will all go to the US to file these class actions, we can file claims to small district courts in our countries.
I agree. I agree. That's a good thought. I have been cooperating with a group of attorneys in the United States who are about to file, or maybe have filed in the meantime, a complaint for damages against Gilead, which is the maker of remdesivir, which is a deadly drug, which was part of Fauci's treatment protocol. Use remdesivir. Don't use all the other dangerous drugs like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. Killed a lot of people. And that is their thought. That is their idea. Let's go and file it in a court, in a lower court, in a state court where judges are elected by the people, and let's go to a venue where you have mostly conservative people who don't believe that the government is something that they can trust. I think that's basically a good idea. The same is probably true in some of the judiciaries in Europe, but it's much more difficult in Europe, in particular in Germany, than it is in the United States, for example. At any rate, is there something that is there something that needs to be discussed that we haven't touched upon yet, that the people, our audience, our viewers need to know? Yes, go ahead, Jim.
I think it might be interesting, since I have two brilliant attorneys and a brilliant physician on panel here, share just a brief story, and I want to show you the drug insert for the new bivalent vaccine. So I live in Gulf Breeze, Florida. I went to the pharmacy. Walmart was one of the large pharmacies, and I know all the pharmacists there and all the people, and they know my position and such. And I was picking up a medication for my beautiful bride, Maggie, who's also an attorney. And the pharmacist behind the desk, we have a good relationship. And I asked her, do you have the new bivalent vaccine in? And she said, oh yeah, we're using it. And I said, do you know that there's zero human testing on the new bivalent vaccine? There's zero. They rolled out a new vaccine and there has been zero testing. I said, I won't mention her name, but I said, can you show me the drug insert, which by law has to accompany every single drug that is dispensed with a pharmacy? And you've all seen this thing. It's a folded up with, I'm exaggerating here, 1,000,000 times, and you have to, it's like Japanese origami, you got to unwrap it. I want to show the audience, and I said, have you ever looked at one before? And she said, well, no, I don't. So I want to show you. She said, oh, here it is. She found it. And I said, well, unfold it. Let's look at it. Well,
blank.
Here it is. Okay, here it is. Can you read what it says on there? Can you read this?
You are kidding.
Intentionally blank.
Okay, this is what they're doing. There's no data. And I said, did you realize that this has been going on now, this charade, for almost 2 years? Now you're pushing a new vaccine with zero testing, zero clinical trials, and you're pushing this. And she goes, oh, well, that's probably because it's under emergency use authorization. I said, no, you're pushing a drug and you're killing my patients. Stop. You have no, and then she went on to say, oh, well, I don't believe in the vaccine, so I didn't take it. That infuriated me. That made me angry. I said, let me get this straight. So you don't believe in the vaccine. You didn't take it yourself.
But you're selling
it. But you are pushing it and killing all my patients. Oh, Dr. Thorp, I'm not pushing it. And I said, you are pushing it. You can call it whatever you want, dispensing and pushing, but none of my patients or myself can call up your pharmacy without getting 10 recorded messages that we have to listen to get through to you, trying to tell us to get the COVID-19 vaccine. Yes, you are pushing it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. There is another American doctor, I forget her name, but we're gonna try and contact her, who very clearly warns those parts of the medical community that participated in this, including the doctors, of course, that they will be held responsible for mass murder. I forget her name. You probably know her, James, but we're going to be in touch with her. Brave woman, outspoken, brave woman.
Yes,
I think I know who you're talking about.
That's just they don't get. They don't realize it because they keep saying they're completing orders. But if you do not know something, and if you don't know that you go to jail for murder, but murder someone, you go to jail. It's not because you don't know that it is wrong and you do it. That gives you permission to do it. Or if somebody else tell you kill that man and you kill him, that gives you the permission to kill. They don't realize that there is absolutely their own responsibility for this, and they don't get it. I just see it in the way they're speaking. They don't get that there's their responsibility about this. And about my persecution, I wanted to tell it's a very funny story, because they called me to ask me some question that's it's about what is going on in our country about responsibility. That's why it's an important funny story. They called me to answer some questions, and after hearing a while what they have to say to me, I told them that I refuse to go further. I will speak to my lawyer. I spoke to Yiannis, and we'll think about what to do next. They told me okay. So I spoke to Yiannis and made. They didn't give me any, but just not any small piece of paper about what is going on. Only the letter that called me to answer their questions. So I made a request to get a file, to get the documents about my questioning.
The charge, yes. What is the charge against me?
They didn't charge me. They told me that they have to ask some questions, so they will decide next if there will be charges applied. So I made a request, like you told me, Yiannis, to give the documents, and they answered me from email that I am not permitted to see these documents. About my persecution, I'm not permitted to see this document.
That's if it weren't so sad, it would be ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous, really. But you can. This tells you another. This emphasizes another really important aspect of what we're dealing with. It's all an illusion. Most of what we're seeing is an illusion. They try to make the whole world believe that they're omnipotent, that they can kill anyone, that they can destroy anyone's business, but they really can't. This is mostly a game of psychology, and so you always have to take into consideration that they don't have the means to go after each and every one of us. They're going after some of us. Sushrit Bhakti is a victim of this, for example. I am too, but we know how to defend ourselves. But they can't go after everyone. That's why I'm saying, if a larger group of people decides that they're going to rise up and go after them by filing, for example, a complaint that then they ask the court to let it go forward as a class action, hopefully as an open class action, which is an international class action. That's going to set a big example. That's going to send a huge message. Thank you, Jim.
Yes, but people are frightened.
Yes.
Reiner. People are very scared about, and I can see why, because I was too. I was in their shoes. It's now I went totally crazy. I'm not frightened of anything anymore. But I was in their shoes, because if you're a polite person and very peaceful citizen working in medicine, because James know that there are very big hours working, and you only see your work and your family, and you try to go on normally and equilibrating this to your family and your work, and you don't have the time to see further about politics or anything else. You just you try to keep yourself in a right state of mind and physical activity, and it is very hard for medical workers to see anything else, especially in Greece, because our time of work is just enormous, and you just don't have the physical strength to see anything else. And somehow, from one day to another, they treat you like a criminal because you know your work well. Okay, you know medicine. You can see the 2 + 2 makes 4, and you make a decision for yourself as a doctor, and they persecute you for this. And it's just not.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, Vasilia. They have stood everything on its head. They have stood everything on its head. What looks as though it's good is really evil. And they're trying, and the courts of law don't dispense justice anymore, but injustice, at least when it comes to these cases. And we have to be aware of this. We have to be aware of the fact that the system that we're still a part of is collapsing. Anyhow, that's why I think we need to create a new one in our regions, tailor-made, custom-made for what we, the people in those regions want, and then connect with each other. And that's what's happening already. It's also happening in the US, by the way.
Woe to those who put evil for good and good evil, bitterness for sweet and sweet for bitterness, darkness for light and light for darkness. This is exactly what is going on today.
Exactly what is going on. That's what the doctor just said. And I'm very touched by that, because he has also the cross behind. And I can understand a lot of things with that. It's symbolic, and it has also a very vast meaning. He is the voice of the murdered children. And
yes, he is. As he says, those children can't speak for themselves.
So I am honored to be with you here, Doctor, and all of you, of course.
I'm honored to be with all of you. You're my family. I've lost my family, much of my family, because they've taken the shot and they think that I'm crazy. Like the rest of my colleagues, many of my colleagues here, I've lost so many friends. I've trained hundreds, probably 1,000 young doctors, and all over the country. I've been rejected by the vast majority of them. They don't even speak to me anymore. So I've lost a lot of family and friends, daughters. And it's very painful, but I have a new family, which includes you, all of you, even though I've never met you. There's a bond of truth that is inseparable. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, the country of origin, doesn't matter your faith. We are one, and we need to stand together exactly like Dr. Reiner said. They can't defeat us. We need to bring the rest of our truthers out of the closet.
And isn't it funny, Jim and Vasilia and Yiannis, how everyone seems to experience the same thing? They're losing friends, or maybe not really friends, but part of their family, but they're gaining new friends. And everyone tells me, like Maria Z, I spoke with her the other day, or Jeremy Nell. Maria Z is from Australia, Jeremy Nell is from South Africa. They're saying the same thing. It feels as though these new people who I met, who are on the same page as I am, it feels as though I've known them for a long time. We're not wasting any time for small talk, meaningless small talk anymore. But we have literally connected. And I think that's what's going to make the big, big difference, because we know, I keep saying, we know how to sing and dance and love and cheer, and they don't. They don't have any access to such emotions. That's what's going to turn the tide. We're humans and they're not.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, well, I want to thank every one of you. This has been very, very interesting. It's a sad story, but it needs to come out, and we're hoping to still reach some of the people who are suffering from this and who are wondering if there's anything that can be done. Yes, many things can be done. The most important thing is to connect with those who have suffered the same kind of damage, connect with as many people as possible. But it was on the one hand, it's a pleasure to have met all of you. On the other hand, it's a very sad story that we're telling here, but it needs to come out, and it's a real honor. Thank you so much, all three of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for
We'll
being
be in
here.
touch. We're connected now.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Take good care.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much, Reiner.
Thank you. So that was today's session of the International Crimes Investigative Committee with Dr. Vasilia Souleimanova, I'm sorry to mispronounce her name, Dr. Jim Thorp, and our friend Yiannis, the attorney from Athens. I think I've met two of them before in person, except that we couldn't get to each other because at that rally in Athens, there was a lot of security for obvious reasons. But this was one of the most devastating interviews that I've done because it deals with a part of the population that can't defend themselves, children and unborn babies who fall victim to these horrific crimes against humanity, which we're talking about. We're hoping that many people will see this and that it will touch as many people as possible and make them rise up, because that's the only thing that'll make a difference. Thank you very much.